Hey guys, I'm Sara Bendrick, landscape contractor and designer, and today I'm speaking with Christina Greenfield, and I'm so excited to talk about your expertise, which largely comes into healthy homes, mostly regarding mold. Could you introduce yourself maybe a little bit better than I just did?
I think you did great, but yeah, I'll introduce myself as well. So Christina Greenfield, I'm the founder of a company called Conscious Healthy Homes, and I founded that company because of my family's experience with mold, unfortunately. And so what we do at Conscious Healthy Homes is just really, we try to bridge the gap. So I try to close the educational gap that it took my family almost 5 years to discover what was going on in our home and how it was impacting our health. So my biggest goal with Conscious Healthy Home is to help people, get through that a little bit faster. And then really there's a lot of fear that's associated with mold, once you first figure out that this is what's happening in your home. So that is one of our pillars, is to try to remove the fear, replace it with education, and help people feel empowered to make the right choices for themselves and their homes.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I feel like there is so much fear about mold, and I think most of us have had some experience with mold at some point in our lives, and it's hard to know, is it harmless, is it the bad kind, is it whatever. And even as a landscape contractor, I've had clients that have completely redone their landscapes because they had mold intrusion, or they had their house poorly built and it allowed for the landscape or moisture to come in. And I have an example of one of my clients. It was in her child's bedroom and her kid was getting sick all the time, and that's how they discovered it, which led to a huge remodel.
Absolutely. That's very similar to our story as well. The thing that led to our discovery, which is very similar to your client, and I find similar with a lot of my clients, is our children that are impacted.
Yeah.
And for what we ended up finding out is that each person in my family, my husband and my 2 children and myself, we all have this genetic predisposition to be highly susceptible to mold, and the condition is called CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So about 25% of the population is actually impacted by this gene that makes you more susceptible to mold. What I found through my journey and just understanding what the heck is going on, with us and our family and stuff. And again, it was my daughter that was mostly impacted. She was the one who was misdiagnosed with autism as a result of the mold exposure. Yeah, and so just going all the way back to the beginning of that story, we moved into this house, and it was a new to us house, but it wasn't a new house. And then probably about 6 months later, my daughter started to exhibit symptoms that were just new to us. But I was a first-time mom, and so I was just like, oh, I'm not going to panic. These things, this is developmental, everything's fine. And I was keeping a chart of her hitting these developmental milestones, because you have to go to the pediatrician, every so often, and tell them
wow, good for you on doing that. I'm sure it was helpful, right?
I
or
mean,
no?
I thought it was helpful because I was scared to be a first-time mom. Honestly, I was like, I'm gonna mess this up, and they don't give you, there's no book, for this particular child. So I was worried, and so I was like, I'm gonna track it. That's how I'm not gonna mess it up. Well, then when she was about 2.5, so she was 2 when we moved in, about 2.5. Her teachers, she was at this little Montessori school, and they started saying, hey, she doesn't want to play with other kids, she's not participating, she's not talking, she's, really struggling with potty training and these things and all. And again, I was like, well, she doesn't really sleep. We had all these reasons why. But then it started progressing, and she stopped talking. She the words that she was saying, she stopped saying. She stopped looking at us. She stopped making eye contact. I would say her name, and she wouldn't do anything. She wouldn't look at you or do anything.
That is scary.
It was frightening. It was really, really scary. And so finally we ended up, putting all these things together, and we went to to talk to a developmental pediatrician. And I didn't understand that process well either. I was just sort of like, okay, this is the next step, and they're going to tell me that everything's fine, or maybe she needs some medicine or something. I was just like, this can't be, we can't really be on this path. And so, but by the time that meeting was over, the developmental pediatrician said, she has enough symptoms to where she qualifies for autism. Your daughter is on the spectrum. And I was shocked. I was shocked because everything that I had ever seen and knew about autism, it was very different than the way my daughter presented. I didn't know that I didn't know what stemming was. And they have a repetitive behavior. For my daughter, it was flapping. And I was like,
okay, yeah.
It's cute. She does that when she's excited, you know, she just flaps her hands. And I was like, that's so cute. But I didn't realize that it's actually like a nervous system release for her, because her nervous system was so hyped up. And when she got excited, it was, you know, she would flap. So we ended up finding this functional medicine doctor who, she was the first person to listen to me. And so I said, you know, I told her the same thing that I told everybody else, looking just like a lunatic, just saying, I tried it and I swear, she, you know, like all this. And she said, okay. She said, what changed? What changed? You know, right before this happened. And I was like, nothing changed. You know, I was like, well, we moved into this house. And then she said, well, tell me more about that house. So I was like, it's a beautiful house. It's in a nice neighborhood. It's, you know, it's on a big corner lot. Like it's the dream house. You know, we were so excited to be able to purchase it and stuff. And then she led us down the path of you need to figure out, this is beginning to be pandemic time now. And so she said, we did some testing on my daughter and figured out that number one, she had the genetic predisposition, but number two, her blood markers were showing that she was just inflamed. She was just full of inflammation. And the doctor said, you know, that the inflammation could be what's causing these symptoms that look like autism, causing her to not be able to speak, causing her to not make eye contact, causing her all this anxiety and mood swings and, you know, all this stuff.
So you're saying the doctor was basically saying that your daughter's diagnosed autism could actually be caused by inflammation, and that was somewhat proven by the blood work that she did.
Yeah.
And now you're chasing it back to see, did this come from my house?
Yes, exactly.
That's so scary.
It was so scary, but we were so naive at the time that we were just following instructions. You know, we were just on the path of like, here's a potential option, we need to rule it out. Here's a potential option, we need to rule it out. You know, because I was like, I was convinced that there's got to be something that we can do to relieve what seems like a lot of discomfort for her. You know, just the fact that she couldn't sleep and she was constantly constipated and not being like, she would get so frustrated because she couldn't articulate what she wanted, so she would have these huge fits, you know. And I was just like, my baby's in there trying to interact with this world, but there's just something. There's like a cloud. There's something in her way.
I can imagine that you would be such a warrior once you like came onto this information and started to realize that like your environment was toxic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
well, I mean, an advocate for my own family was all I could do, because, you know, I didn't know enough to start, you know, and it's such a controversial topic that I wasn't certainly not comfortable enough saying, you know, anytime somebody brought up something similar, you know, saying you got to check your house for mold. So I was like, this is just, I guess, still wild to me. You know, it was still wild. But then, so the doctor tells us that. So then we go on testing. We start testing the health, and I remember opening the results, and there's a big red mark at the bottom. And there's a number, and I'm like, you know, I'm looking at what the number means, and it says that this is like very, very high levels of toxic mold, and, you know, basically like this is an uninhabitable house. And I'm like,
you need to vacate.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these results in my beautiful house, you know, and I'm like,
oh my god,
I'm so confused, you know. So immediately I'm calling the doctor. I'm like, what does this mean? What is this? What, you know, help me understand. And she ends up connecting me with a consultant who was, I'm not sure if she was an indoor environmental professional, but she was somebody who was like on a mold journey, who understood like what the next steps would be, and she had opened up a kind of consulting company to help guide people through the next steps, because the doctor's like, I'm here to treat your body, but like you got a whole other set of stuff that you need to figure out. You know, what do you do with your stuff? How do you get out? Where do you move? How do you afford this? Like all these
like
other
what
steps.
can you take? What do you leave?
Yeah.
What do you burn?
Yes. And so she sent me to this consultant, and this is Christmas time, and she started to just kind of walk us through the reality of like what we were facing, you know, and the fact that there's many things that you're gonna have to make choices, and they're, you know, based on the fact that your child is sick, you might want to make the more conservative choices, and that might mean leaving behind everything that you see as you're looking around. Like
everything? So it might as well have been like your house burnt down.
It might as well, yeah.
And if you have moisture damage, are you guaranteed to eventually get toxic mold? Or does sometimes it just goes that way and sometimes it dries out and it's fine?
So, I mean, it can dry out. I mean, it depends. So it depends on like where the source is and how long the issue has presented. But what I understand now is that, you know, and this is what I try to tell my clients too, is I'd say, hey, I understand that mold is the cause of like a lot of your pain, but mold is not actually the thing. We're targeting making sure that we've handled our building materials in a way that if they get wet, they are able to dry out. You know, and we're targeting the fact that we need a really good air management plan, a really good water management plan, and then depending on your climate zone, you know, we're also talking about potentially vapor barriers and things, but also your thermal control. So it's really in the building envelope, because if you can, you know, if water gets in and it gets out, you know, there shouldn't be an issue. It can dry.
Before we go, I want to make sure that people can find out more about you and where they can find you. Obviously, I know you're on Instagram, but I also found you on the Build podcast.
Yes.
So go ahead and let us know where we can get more from you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Conscious Healthy Home. All my stuff, comprehensive stuff, is on my website, conscioushealthyhome.com. And so I'm pretty proud of my blog. I think I put a lot of information out on the blog, free information to help people understand. I kind of consider them building science little sound bites, and so it's like a digestible, you know, digestible piece of information. So yeah, people can go there.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So your website is conscioushealthyhomes.com?
Conscioushealthyhome.com, yes.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. This has been so fun to talk to you and learn about something that really I didn't know a lot about before. So
that's awesome.
Thank you.
I appreciate your curiosity. I really do. I mean, it's absolutely my passion to help people, you know, understand the information that I didn't even know that long ago. So I love your curiosity, and I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've been really looking forward to talking to you. I've been so excited.
Yeah.